The Houthi Insurgency and their escalating confrontations with the U.S. and its allies have significant regional and political ramifications for Washington, affecting its strategic interests, alliances, and domestic politics. Here's a breakdown. Regional ramifications. Escalation of proxy conflicts with Iran. The Houthis are a key part of Iran's axis of resistance, which includes Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iraqi militias. The U.S. strikes on the Houthis risk direct or indirect retaliation from Iran or its proxies in Iraq, Syria, like attacks on U.S. bases. Could lead to a broader regional war, forcing the U.S. into deeper military involvement. Threat to Gulf allies, Saudi Arabia and UAE. The Houthis have targeted Saudi oil infrastructure and UAE cities with drones, missiles. The United States must reassure Gulf partners, who fear Houthi Iranian expansion, while avoiding being dragged into their conflicts. Saudi-Houthi peace talks, mediated by Oman, could be undermined by U.S. strikes, complicating Riyadh's exit from the Yemen war. Red Sea trade disruptions and economic fallout. Houthi attacks on shipping have forced reroutes around Africa, raising costs and delaying global trade. If prolonged, this could increase inflation pressures in the U.S. and Europe. The U.S. Navy is stretched thin defending ships, raising questions about long-term sustainability. Risk of regional war spillover. If Houthi attacks kill U.S. troops or sink a ship, pressure for massive retaliation grows. Could trigger Iranian escalation, e.g. blocking the Strait of Hormuz, or Israeli strikes in Lebanon versus Hezbollah. Political ramifications for the U.S. Domestic political divisions. With the plethora of executive actions and Ukraine sucking the oxygen, there isn't much domestic tolerance for international crisis. Progressives, opposing endless wars and U.S. involvement in Yemen, could become a major 2025 political issue, especially if attacks escalate. Strain on U.S. military resources. The continuous naval patrols and airstrikes drain resources needed for China deterrence, Taiwan, South China Sea. This raises questions about overextension in the Middle East. Humanitarian and diplomatic backlash. U.S. strikes in Yemen risk civilian casualties, fueling anti-American sentiment, and could undermine UN-led peace efforts in Yemen, where millions face famine, and may complicate relations with Muslim-majority nations over perceived U.S. support for Israel. Legal and authorization challenges. Trump has not sought new congressional approval for strikes, using existing AUMF justifications, and could face legal challenges if operations expand, War Powers Act debates. Key takeaways. How this affects U.S. strategy. Proxy war risks. The U.S. must deter Houthis without triggering full-blown war with Iran. Gulf ally dilemma, balancing support for Saudi-UAE security versus avoiding their conflicts. Economic and trade threats. Prolonged Red Sea disruptions could hurt global markets. Political tightrope. Trump must avoid appearing weak or being drawn into another Middle East quagmire. The Houthi conflict is no longer just a Yemen issue. It's now a critical test of U.S. power projection, alliance management, and crisis diplomacy in an increasingly volatile region. The Houthis, officially known as Ansar Allah, are considered a significant concern for the United States due to their regional influence, military actions, and ties to Iran, which align with broader geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. Here are the key reasons why they set off alarm bells for the U.S. Iranian backing and regional proxy conflict. The Houthis receive weapons, training, and financial support from Iran, making them part of Tehran's axis of resistance, alongside Hezbollah, Hamas, and Shiite militias in Iraq. The U.S. sees the group as an Iranian proxy, extending Tehran's influence in Yemen and threatening Saudi Arabia and other Gulf allies. Threat to international shipping and global trade. The Houthis have repeatedly attacked commercial ships in the Red Sea and Bab el-Mandeb Strait, a critical choke point for global trade. About 12% of world trade passes through. Their use of drones, missiles, and hijackings has forced reroutes, raised shipping costs, and triggered US-led naval counterstrikes, Operation Prosperity Guardian. Escalation of regional conflicts. The group's attacks often cite solidarity with Palestinians amid the Israel-Hamas war, but they risk broadening regional conflict. The US fears a wider war involving Iran, Israel, and Gulf states if Houthi strikes provoke heavier retaliation. Military capabilities and asymmetric warfare. Despite Yemen's poverty, the Houthis possess long-range drones, ballistic missiles, and naval mines, some supplied by Iran. They've successfully struck UAE, Saudi oil facilities, and US warships, proving their ability to disrupt security. Undermining US allies, Saudi Arabia and UAE. The Houthis have fought a years-long war against a Saudi-led coalition, draining Riyadh's resources and destabilizing the region. US partners view the group as an existential threat, pushing Washington to respond. Hostage-taking and terrorism designation. The Houthis have detained foreign nationals, including Americans, and were briefly designated as a foreign terrorist organization, FTO, by the Trump administration, later reversed by Biden for humanitarian reasons. US response. The US has conducted airstrikes on Houthi targets, imposed sanctions on their funding networks, led multinational naval coalitions to protect shipping. The Houthis alarm the US because they serve as an Iranian proxy in a strategic region, threaten global trade routes with asymmetric attacks, risk dragging the US into another Middle East conflict. Their actions force Washington to balance military deterrence with avoiding all-out war, a delicate and dangerous challenge. China has taken a cautious diplomatic approach to the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, balancing its economic interests, geopolitical rivalry with the US, and relations with Iran. While Western officials and analysts suggest indirect Chinese support for the Houthis via Iran, Beijing has publicly avoided direct involvement. China's official response calls for ceasefire and dialogue. China frames the crisis as part of the broader Israel-Palestine conflict, urging de-escalation without condemning the Houthis outright. Opposes unilateral US strikes, criticizes American-British airstrikes in Yemen as worsening regional instability. Protects its shipping quietly. Reports suggest China secured Houthi assurances that its ships won't be targeted, though attacks on a Hong Kong-flagged vessel later tested this. Why China avoids strong action. Economic interests in the Red Sea. China is the top trading partner for both Iran and Saudi Arabia and relies on the Red Sea for oil imports and Belt and Road Initiative (BRI) projects. Yet unlike the US, China has not joined naval coalitions to protect shipping, relying instead on back-channel deals with Iran, Houthis. Strategic opportunism. Undermines US leadership. By staying out of military action, China positions itself as a neutral peacemaker, contrasting with US militarism. Leverages Iran ties. While China doesn't directly arm the Houthis, its oil purchases from Iran provide Tehran revenue that indirectly funds proxies. Avoids alienating Arab partners. China has strong ties with Saudi Arabia and UAE, who oppose the Houthis, but also seek regional stability. Beijing hosted reconciliation talks between Saudi Arabia and Iran, 2023, positioning itself as a mediator. Evidence of indirect Chinese influence. Iran Houthi arms pipeline. US officials allege Chinese components, e.g. drone missile tech, reach Houthis via Iran. Diplomatic cover. China and Russia blocked tougher UN measures against the Houthis, shielding them from sanctions. Future implications. If Red Sea disruptions severely harm China's economy, Beijing might pressure Iran to rein in the Houthis. But for now, China benefits from US distraction. Focus on Middle East weakens pivot to Asia. Non-aligned image, winning favor in Global South. China's calculated neutrality. China is not actively supporting Houthi attacks, but its economic ties with Iran and passive diplomatic stance indirectly enable them. Beijing's priority is stability for trade, not taking sides, while letting the U.S. bear the security burden. This strategy reinforces China's narrative as a non-interventionist power, even as it reaps geopolitical benefits. Please like, share, and subscribe.